The gleaming diplomas caught the sunlight as they were handed out one by one. I sat among a sea of identical black caps and gowns, my heart hammering with a mixture of pride and anticipation. For years of sleepless nights, grueling exams, and relentless hard work had led to this moment. I was graduating summa cum laude from Westridge University with a degree in computer engineering, and I'd already secured a promising position at a tech startup in the city. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My eyes scanned the crowd, finally spotting my family in the visitor section. My mother Jennifer sat primly in a floral dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, her smile tight and practiced. Beside her, my father Richard scrolled through his phone, barely looking up at the ceremony unfolding before him. And then there was Lucas, my younger brother by 3 years, fidgeting in his seat, clearly bored by the proceedings. I shouldn't have expected anything different. This had been the dynamic for as long as I could remember. When my name was called, I walked across the stage with my head held high. "Ethan Mercer, summa cum laude," the dean announced, her voice ringing through the speakers. I heard a smattering of applause from my family's direction, nothing like the enthusiastic cheers and whistles that erupted for other graduates. I accepted my diploma, shook the dean's hand, and moved my tassel from right to left. For years of excellence, condensed into a 15-second walk across a stage. After the ceremony, I found my family near the fountain in the central courtyard. My mother hugged me briefly, patting my back with the same detached affection she might show a distant relative. "Congratulations, Ethan," she said. "We're going to dinner at Bellini's to celebrate. I think your father made reservations for 5 o'clock. No, I'm proud of you." No acknowledgement of my academic achievements or the scholarship I'd maintained through for years of intense study. Just logistics about dinner. My father shook my hand firmly, a businessman's handshake. "Good job, son," he said, his eyes already drifting back to his phone. "Let's get those graduation photos your mother wants, then head to the restaurant." Lucas, wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt to my graduation, offered a half-hearted fist bump. "Congrats, bro. Finally done with this place, huh?" We posed for photos by the university's iconic fountain, my smile growing more strained with each click of my mother's camera. What should have been a joyful celebration felt more like an obligation they were eager to complete. Bellini's was an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with crisp white tablecloths and waiters who introduced themselves by name. We were seated at a corner table, and I couldn't help but notice my parents had chosen to celebrate my graduation at the same restaurant, where they'd thrown an extravagant party when Lucas had merely gotten accepted to State University last year. The conversation flowed around mundane topics: the weather, my father's golf game, my mother's garden club drama. Not once did they ask about my plans, my job offer, or my achievements. I might as well have been a stranger they were obligated to dine with. Then, as the waiter cleared our plates and brought dessert menus, my father cleared his throat. "Son, we need to discuss your financial situation now that you've graduated," he said, his tone shifting to what I recognized as his business voice. I nodded, setting down my water glass. This was actually a conversation I'd been looking forward to. When I was accepted to Westridge 4 years ago, my grandfather, my mother's father, had set up a scholarship fund for me. He'd been immensely proud that I'd gotten into such a prestigious university, and he wanted to ensure I could focus on my studies without financial stress. The scholarship had covered my tuition and housing, but there was supposed to be a substantial amount left over, around $45,000, that would be released to me upon graduation. My grandfather had been clear. The remaining money was meant to give me a solid start in life. Whether for graduate school, a down payment on a home, or even seed money for a business venture. "About your grandfather's scholarship fund," my father continued, straightening the silverware in front of him. "There's been a change of plans." A cold sensation settled in my stomach. What kind of change? My mother jumped in, her voice taking on that artificial sweetness she used when she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like. "Ethan, dear, we've decided that the remaining money would be better used for Lucas's education. I struggling at state, and we think he might do better at a private university with smaller classes and more support. The restaurant seemed to fade around me, the ambient chatter becoming a distant hum. You what? That money was specifically set aside for me by Grandpa Max. It's my scholarship. Now, son, my father said, his tone patronizing, you've already secured a good job. You'll be making a decent salary right out of the gate. Lucas, on the other hand, needs this opportunity to find his footing. Lucas, who had been texting under the table, looked up with a smirk. Yeah, bro. I'm thinking of transferring to Westlake Private. Their business program is way better than the one at State. Westlake Private, an expensive university known more for its country club atmosphere and networking opportunities than its academic rigor. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But I struggled to keep my voice steady. This is my money. Grandpa set it up specifically for me. My mother's expression hardened slightly. Your grandfather would want what's best for the family. Lucas needs this chance, Ethan. You've always been the smart one, the capable one. Your brother needs more support? Support? He's had nothing but support his entire life. The words burst out before I could stop them. I worked for that scholarship. I maintained a 3.9 GPA for 4 years while working part-time. That money was meant for me. My father's face darkened. The decision has already been made, Ethan. The paperwork was finalized last week. Funds have been transferred to a new account for Lucas's education. Last week, they hadn't even waited until after my graduation to take what was rightfully mine. Did you even have the legal right to do that? I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Your grandfather made Richard the trustee? It's all perfectly legal. I looked at Lucas, who had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, though not enough to refuse the money. And you're okay with this? Taking money that was explicitly meant for me? He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. Mom and Dad said it makes the most sense for the family. You're already set with your job and everything. The anger that rose within me wasn't hot and explosive, it was cold, clarifying like ice water in my veins. In that moment, sitting in that pretentious restaurant surrounded by my family who had just stolen from me, something fundamental shifted inside me. I carefully placed my napkin on the table and stood up. Ethan, sit down, my mother hissed. Glancing around at the nearby tables, people are looking. Let them look, I said, my voice steady and calm despite the storm raging inside me. I want to be very clear about something. What you've done isn't just disappointing, it's theft. That money was designated for me by Grandpa Max, and you had no moral right to redirect it. Legal technicalities aside, my father stood up too, his face flushing. Now you listen here, no. You listen. I cut him off, surprising even myself with my firmness. For my entire life, I've accepted being second best in this family. I've accepted that Lucas gets the celebrations, the attention, the resources, while I get a pat on the head for my achievements, and then I'm expected to move on. But this crosses a line I can't ignore. The restaurant had indeed grown quieter, nearby diners pretending not to listen to our family drama unfolding. I'm not making a scene, I continued, maintaining my composure. I'm simply informing you that this conversation isn't over, not by a long shot. With that, I turned and walked out of Bellini's, leaving behind my graduation dinner, and in many ways, the last remnants of my desire to please my parents. In my car, parked on the street outside the restaurant, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, not yet turning the key in the ignition. My mind was racing, cycling through memories of all the times I'd been sidelined for Lucas. All the achievements that had been minimized, all the support that had been withheld, not out of malice perhaps, but out of a fundamental misunderstanding of what family should be. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even turn on the radio to drown out my thoughts. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls that would change everything. First was to my grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Abernathy. I'd met him several times over the years, and Grandpa Max had always spoken highly of him. He didn't answer, so I left a detailed voicemail explaining what had happened and requesting an urgent meeting. The second call was to my friend Zoe, who had graduated alongside me that day and who had been my rock throughout our university years.
"Ethan, aren't you at your family dinner?" she answered, the sounds of her own celebration audible in the background. "It ended early," I said, my voice more controlled than I felt.
"Can I come over?" Something in my tone must have alerted her. "Of course. Are you okay? What happened?" "I'll explain when I get there. Save me some cake." As I drove to Zoe's parents' house, where her graduation party was in full swing, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from my mother. I ignored them all. Whatever justifications or manipulations she wanted to try, I wasn't interested. Not anymore. Zoe's family welcomed me warmly into their celebration, her mother hugging me tightly and her father clapping me on the back with genuine pride. Another summa cum laude graduated our table, he announced to the gathered friends and relatives, raising a toast that made me feel more valued than anything my own family had done that day. Later, when the party had quieted and many guests had left, I sat with Zoe on her parents' back porch and told her everything. They just took it, the entire scholarship remainder. Zoe's face reflected the outrage I felt. Can they even do that? "Apparently my father was made trustee," I said, staring out at the darkening yard. "I'm not sure that gives him the right to completely reallocate funds against my grandfather's explicit wishes. That's why I called Mr. Abernathy." Zoe shook her head, her graduation cap long since discarded, but her honor cord still around her neck. "This is about more than just the money, isn't it?" I nodded slowly. "It's about a lifetime of being treated like my achievements are expected, while Lucas's mediocrity is celebrated. It's about my parents consistently sending the message that I matter less." "What are you going to do?" she asked. I took a deep breath, the night air filling my lungs as a sense of resolve settled over me. "I'm going to find out exactly what rights I have regarding that scholarship fund. Then, going to make it clear to my parents that I'm done accepting scraps from their table." That night, I stayed in Zoe's family's guest room, surrounded by people who celebrated achievement and hard work, who understood the value of keeping promises and respecting boundaries. The contrast with my own family couldn't have been more stark. My mother called 3 more times before midnight. I finally texted her a brief message. "I'm safe. Don't contact me again until I reach out to you. I need time to process what you've done." She responded immediately. "You're being dramatic, Ethan. This is what's best for the family. Your brother needs this opportunity." I didn't reply. There was nothing more to say. The next morning, I woke to an email from Mr. Abernathy. He could see me at 10 a.m. if I could come to his office downtown. I replied immediately to confirm. Zoe offered to drive me, but this was something I needed to do alone. I thanked her family for their hospitality, promised to keep Zoe updated, and headed downtown to the imposing building where Abernathy and Associates occupied the 12th floor. Mr. Abernathy was in his 60s, with silver hair and the sharp eyes of someone who missed nothing. He greeted me with a firm handshake and ushered me into his office, a space lined with law books and framed credentials. "Ethan," he said once we were seated, "I was very disturbed by your message. Before we continue, I need to ask, are you certain about what you told me? That your parents have reallocated your grandfather's scholarship fund to your brother?" "Completely certain," I replied. "They announced it at my graduation dinner yesterday. They said the paperwork was finalized last week and the funds have already been transferred." Mr. Abernathy's expression darkened, pulled out a file from his cabinet, and placed it on the desk between us. "I handled your grandfather's estate, including the establishment of your scholarship trust. What your parents have described doing raises serious legal questions." He opened the file and turned several pages, scanning the documents with practiced efficiency. Here we are. "Ethan, while your father was indeed named trustee of the scholarship fund, the terms are quite specific. The fund was established for your education at Westridge University, with any remaining balance to be released directly to you upon graduation for further education or establishment of adult life." To quote your grandfather's exact wording, my heart began to race. They didn't have the right to give it to Lucas. "Not according to these documents," Mr. Abernathy confirmed, his finger tracing a paragraph of legal text. "Your father, as trustee, had the duty to administer the Trust according to its terms, not to change the beneficiary at will. What you're describing would constitute a breach of fiduciary duty. He looked at me over his reading glasses. Do you have any documentation of what they've done? Any emails, texts, written confirmation? I shook my head. They just told me at dinner. But they were very clear that the money had been transferred last week to an account for Lucas. Mr. Abernathy nodded thoughtfully. I'll need to look into this further. If what you're telling me is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt you, we may need to take legal action to recover those funds. Your grandfather was very explicit about his wishes, and I take my responsibility to his estate seriously. For the first time since the disastrous dinner, I felt a flicker of hope. Should I do in the meantime? Don't sign anything your parents give you, he advised immediately. Don't agree to any further discussions about the fund without legal representation. And if possible, try to get written confirmation of what they've done in email, text, anything that acknowledges their actions. I nodded, my mind already formulating a plan. I understand. And thank you, Mr. Abernathy. My grandfather always said you were a man of integrity. A smile briefly softened his professional demeanor. Max was a dear friend as well as a client. He was immensely proud of you, Ethan. He talked about your achievements constantly. Those words meant more to me than any half-hearted congratulations from my parents ever had. As I left Mr. Abernathy's office, I checked my phone to find 6 missed calls from my father and a text that simply read, "Call me immediately. This childish behavior stops now." Instead of calling, I crafted a careful email. Dad, I've consulted with Grandpa Max's lawyer regarding the scholarship fund. Before we speak further, I need you to clarify in writing exactly what actions you've taken regarding the remaining balance that was designated for me upon graduation. Ethan Short, too. The point and hopefully a trap that would provide the written evidence Mr. Abernathy had suggested I obtain. My father's response came within minutes. This is ridiculous. The trust allowed for discretionary use for family education purposes, which is exactly what we're doing. Lucas needs this opportunity more than you do. Come home so we can discuss this like adults, instead of involving lawyers. I forwarded the exchange to Mr. Abernathy immediately, then drove to my apartment near campus. I'd been planning to move out within the month, heading to a new place closer to my job, but now I needed to accelerate those plans. I couldn't risk my parents showing up unannounced to pressure me in person. That evening, as I was sorting through my belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate, my phone rang with my mother's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Ethan, this has gone far enough," she began without preamble. "Your father and I are very disappointed in your reaction. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me, Mom?" I interrupted, surprising both of us with my directness. "I earned my scholarship. I worked part-time throughout college. I secured my own job. Meanwhile, you've given Lucas everything on a silver platter, and now you're giving him my money too." "It's not your money," she snapped, her voice losing its veneer of maternal concern. "It's family money, and as your parents, we decide how it's best used. Lucas has always needed more support than you. You've always been self-sufficient." The circular logic was maddening. I was self-sufficient because I had to be, because they had never given me the support they lavished on Lucas, and now they were using my forced independence as justification for taking away what was rightfully mine. "Mr. Abernathy disagrees with your interpretation," I said calmly. "Grandpa Max established that fund specifically for me, with specific terms about how the remaining balance would be handled upon my graduation." There was a moment of silence. "On the line, you've actually spoken to James Abernathy?" Her voice had changed, a note of uncertainty creeping in. "This morning I confirmed. He was very interested to hear about your reallocation of the funds." Another pause. I could almost hear her recalculating. "Ethan, there's no need to be adversarial about this. We're family. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone." "No, Mom. You're doing what's best for Lucas, at my expense." "Always have," she sighed dramatically. "I'm putting your father on." There was a rustling as the phone changed hands, and then my father's authoritative voice came through. "Ethan, this ends now. Whatever James Abernathy told you, he doesn't have the full picture. I'm the trustee, and I have discretionary power over those funds. Then you won't mind forwarding me the trust documents that give you that authority, I said. Mr. Abernathy showed me the original terms today, and they're very specific about the money coming to me upon graduation. A heavy silence followed. I'm disappointed in you, son, he finally said, his voice hard. After everything we've done, to turn on your family like this, to deprive your brother of an opportunity, I'm not the one who's turned on family, I cut in. You and Mom made that choice when you decided to steal what Grandpa Max explicitly left for me. That's enough. His voice rose sharply. You will not speak to me this way. Either accept our decision or what, Dad? You'll cut me off? You've already taken the only financial support I was counting on. What else is there? The line went quiet again, and I realized I'd called his bluff. They had already played their strongest card. We expect you home for Sunday dinner, he finally said, his tone making it clear this was a command, not an invitation. We'll discuss this as a family, without lawyers. I won't be there, I replied simply. I'll be in contact through Mr. Abernathy from now on. I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding but my resolve stronger than ever. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against my parents' manipulations. It felt terrifying and exhilarating, all at once. My phone immediately lit up with texts from both of them, ranging from angry demands to guilt-inducing pleas. I ignored them all, focusing instead on packing my essential belongings. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I would never again allow myself to be the afterthought in my own life story. The following Monday, 3 days after my graduation, I started my new job at Innovitech, a growing tech company specializing in healthcare software. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction from my family drama. My colleagues were welcoming. The projects were challenging. For 8 hours a day, I could focus on building something meaningful instead of dwelling on what had been taken from me. After work, I met with Mr. Abernathy again. He had news. I've reviewed all the documentation and made some inquiries, he told me, his expression grave but determined. Your father did indeed transfer the remaining balance, $43,875 to be precise, to a new account last week. However, he did not have the legal authority to change the beneficiary of those funds. My breath caught. So what happens now? Drafted a formal letter demanding the immediate return of the funds to the original trust account to be dispersed to you, as per the original terms. If they don't comply within 7 business days, we'll file a petition with the probate court, alleging breach of fiduciary duty. The legal terminology was somewhat overwhelming, but the bottom line was clear. We were fighting back. Will this work? I asked. Mr. Abernathy leaned forward slightly. The documentation is on our side, Ethan. Your grandfather was very clear about his intentions, and your father's actions directly contradict the terms of the trust. I believe we have a strong case. I nodded, trying to process what this would mean. Taking my parents to court, potentially testifying against them. The final severance of whatever fragile family bonds remained. No, there's something else you should. No, Mr. Abernathy added, his expression softening slightly. In reviewing your grandfather's papers, I found a letter he left for you to be delivered upon your college graduation. With everything that happened with your parents, it seems this was overlooked. He handed me a sealed envelope, my name written on the front in my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled slightly as I took it. I'll give you some privacy, Mr. Abernathy said, standing. Take all the time you need. He left his office, closing the door quietly behind him. I stared at the envelope for a long moment before carefully breaking the seal and unfolding the letter inside. My dear Ethan, it began, and I could almost hear my grandfather's warm, gruff voice in the words. If you're reading this, you've accomplished what I always knew you would, graduating from Westridge with flying colors. I wish more than anything that I could be there to see it, to watch you walk across that stage and take your place among the achievers and the builders of the world. You've always been special, Ethan, not just because of your intelligence, though. God knows you've got plenty of that. It's your determination, your quiet dignity, your refusal to seek validation through shortcuts or manipulation. You remind me so much of myself at your age, perhaps that's why we've always understood each other. The scholarship fund I've established for you is more than just financial support. It's my vote of confidence in your future and the man I know you'll become. The remainder that comes to you upon graduation is meant to give you a solid foundation as you begin building your own legacy. I've made your father the trustee because legally it was the simplest solution. But make no mistake, this money is for you, Ethan, not for your parents, not for your brother, not for anyone else. It is my gift to you, and it comes with only one condition: that you use it to further your own dreams, not anyone else's. I know it hasn't been easy being the responsible one, the independent one in your family. I've watched how your achievements have been taken for granted, while your brother's minimal efforts are celebrated. It's a dynamic I recognized because I experienced something similar in my own youth. Here's what I want you to remember. You don't need their validation to be exceptional. You don't need their permission to prioritize your own well-being. And you absolutely don't need to diminish yourself to make others comfortable with their mediocrity. I'm proud of you, grandson. Not just for what you've achieved, but for who you are. Build your life on your own terms, and know that wherever I'm watching with immense pride. With all my love, Grandpa Mac's tears streamed down my face as I finished reading, not tears of sadness, but of validation, of being truly seen and understood by someone who mattered deeply to me. My grandfather had known. He had seen the family dynamics clearly. And this fund wasn't just financial support. It was his way of trying to balance the scales, to give me what my parents had always withheld. And now I understood why my parents had been so quick to redirect the money. It wasn't just about helping Lucas. It was about maintaining the family dynamic that benefited them. If I had financial independence, if I had options and resources, their control over me would diminish. With newfound clarity, I carefully folded the letter and put it in my pocket. When Mr. Abernathy returned, I met his gaze with determination. I want to proceed with the legal action, I said firmly, and I want to include my grandfather's letter as evidence of his intentions. Mr. Abernathy nodded approvingly. That letter strengthens our case considerably. I'll file the petition. Tomorrow, as I left his office, I felt as though a weight had been lifted. Not because I was certain of victory, but because for the first time, I was fighting for myself with the full conviction that I deserved better than what my family had offered me. The next 2 weeks were a blur of work during the day and legal preparations in the evenings. My parents' initial confidence crumbled when they received Mr. Abernathy's formal letter, placed by a desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative and of me. The texts and calls turned from angry to pleading. My mother tried emotional manipulation. This is tearing our family apart, Ethan. Is money really worth destroying everything we've built? My father tried intimidation. You're making a grave mistake. This will follow you for the rest of your life. Sflegetz predictably vacillated between hostility and wounded innocence. I didn't ask for any of this, bro. You're the one making it weird. I responded to none of it, channeling all communication through Mr. Abernathy as he had advised. The legal process was moving forward, and each day that passed strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. Then, 17 days after my graduation, everything changed. Hello, Ethan Mercer speaking. Ethan, it's Carol Davis, your grandfather's neighbor. Her voice was tentative, as if unsure of her welcome.
Hi.
I got your number from the alumni office. I told them I was your aunt. I sat up straighter, surprised. Mrs. Davis had lived next door to my grandfather for decades. They'd been close friends, sharing garden vegetables and looking out for each other after both had lost their spouses. Mrs. Davis, of course I don't mind. What can I do for you? Wanted to congratulate you on your graduation, first of all. Max would have been bursting with pride. Thank you, I said, a lump forming in my throat at the mention of my grandfather. But that's not the only reason I'm calling.
I'll wait.
Her voice grew more serious. I've been hearing some concerning things from your mother when she visits your grandfather's house to check on it, about you refusing to help your brother, about legal threats. It didn't sound like the Ethan Max always described to me. My stomach tightened. Of course, my mother would be spinning the narrative to make me the villain. Mrs. Davis, I'm afraid my mother hasn't given you the full story. As figured as much, dear. Max always said you were the honest one. There was a smile in her voice. That's why I'm calling. I think there's something you should know. She explained that about 2 months before he passed away, my grandfather had asked her to witness some paperwork. He was very specific about it being for your education and future. He made me read it before I signed as a witness, said he wanted someone independent to know his exact intentions in case there was ever any confusion. My heart began racing. Mrs. Davis, do you remember what the document said? I do. I may be 78, but my memory is sharp as a tack. It stated that the scholarship fund was exclusively for you. Ethan, the remaining money after your education was complete was to go directly to you upon graduation. There was a specific clause I remember because Max pointed it out. Tot said the funds could not be redirected to any other family member under any circumstances. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed with vindication. Mrs. Davis, would you be willing to sign an affidavit stating what you just told me? It would help enormously with my current situation. That's exactly why I'm calling, dear. When your mother started talking about how the money was family money that could be used for any child's education, I knew something wasn't right. Max was crystal clear about his wishes. I'd be happy to put it in writing. After thanking her profusely and getting her address to forward to Mr. Abernathy, I ended the call with a renewed sense of purpose. My grandfather hadn't just left me. Financial support, he'd anticipated the very situation I now found myself in and had taken steps to protect me. I immediately called Mr. Abernathy and relayed the conversation. He was as excited as a dignified lawyer could allow himself to be. This is excellent news, Ethan. A witness to the intent of the trust, who isn't a family member, will carry significant weight. I'll send someone to take Mrs. Davis's statement tomorrow. The next day, I received another unexpected call, this time from my Uncle James, my father's younger brother. Uncle James had always been the black sheep of the family, choosing to become a high school teacher rather than joining the family's real estate business. My father viewed this as a personal betrayal, and consequently, we saw Uncle James only at obligatory holiday gatherings. Ethan, it's your Uncle James, do you have a moment to talk? Of course, I said, genuinely pleased to hear from him. Of all my relatives, he was the one I felt most kinship with. I heard about what's happening with your scholarship fund, he said without preamble. Your father called me, trying to get me to talk some sense into you. I tensed, preparing for another lecture about family loyalty. I told him he was the one who needed sense talked into him, Uncle James continued, surprising me. What they're doing is wrong, Ethan, and I want you to know not everyone in this family supports it. Relief washed over me. Thank you, Uncle James. That means a lot. I also want you to know that I had a conversation with your grandfather about that scholarship fund shortly before he passed. He made it very clear it was for you and you alone. Said he was setting it up that way because he saw how your achievements were always overshadowed by the attention given to Lucas. Another confirmation, another ally I hadn't expected. Would you be willing to put that in writing too? I asked. Already have, he replied. I sent an email to that lawyer of yours this morning. Abernathy, right? Max's old friend? That's right. Thank you, Uncle James. Don't thank me for doing the right thing, Ethan. Just know that real family supports each other's growth, not just the neediest member at everyone else's expense. After we hung up, I sat in silence, processing these unexpected developments. For years, I'd felt isolated within my own family, the odd one out who never quite fit the mold. Now, I was discovering allies I hadn't known. I had people who had seen the truth of my family's dynamics and who were willing to stand up for what was right. That evening, Mr. Abernathy called with news that shifted the entire landscape of our legal battle. Ethan, we've had a significant development. After receiving the statements from Mrs. Davis and your uncle, I sent an updated demand letter to your parents' lawyer, including copies of these new statements. And, I prompted, when he paused. And it seems they've reconsidered their position. Their lawyer contacted me an hour ago to discuss a settlement. My breath caught. What kind of settlement? They're proposing returning the full amount to you with interest, the condition that you sign a non-disclosure agreement about the matter. I almost laughed. Of course, My parents were more concerned about their reputation than about doing the right thing. "What do you recommend?" I asked. "From a strictly legal perspective, it's a favorable offer. No, you get the money that's rightfully yours without a potentially lengthy court battle. The NDA would prevent you from discussing the specific terms of the settlement, but not the fact that there was a dispute that was resolved." I considered this. The money was important. It represented not just financial security, but my grandfather's belief in me. But there was something else at stake here. 2. Truth, accountability, the breaking of unhealthy patterns. "I need to think about it," I told Mr. Abernathy. "Can I let you know tomorrow?" "Of course. Take the time you need." That night was one of deep reflection. I thought about what I really wanted from this confrontation with my parents. Was it just about the money, or was it about something deep? Recognition, respect, a fundamental shift in how they treated me. I called Zoe, who had become my sounding board throughout this ordeal. "They're trying to buy your silence," she said bluntly after I explained the settlement offer. "They know they're wrong, but they don't want to admit it or change how they treat you. They just want the problem, meaning you standing up for yourself, to go away." "But I get the money back," I pointed out. "Isn't that the main thing?" "Is it?" she challenged. "Think about what happens after. They give you the money, you sign the NDA, and then what? Everything goes back to how it was before. Lucas remains the golden child. Your achievements continue to be minimized, and nothing really changes except your bank balance." Her words hit home. What I needed wasn't just the return of my grandfather's gift. It was a fundamental restructuring of my relationship with my family, a recognition of the harmful patterns that had shaped our interactions for years. "What would you do?" I asked her. "I'd make it clear that the money is the bare minimum," she said firmly. "I'd tell them that if they want a relationship with you moving forward, things need to change in a meaningful way. No more taking you for granted. No more double standards. No more treating you like the perpetual afterthought." Her advice resonated deeply. The next morning, I called Mr. Abernathy. "I've decided to counter their offer," I said. "Yes to the return of the funds with interest, but no to the NDA instead. I want a face-to-face meeting with both of my parents, with you present, where we discuss not just the money, but the patterns of behavior that led to this situation." There was a pause. Then Mr. Abernathy spoke with what sounded like respect in his voice. "That's an unusual counteroffer in a financial dispute, but I understand your reasoning. I'll present it to their lawyer today." The response came faster than I expected. By that afternoon, Mr. Abernathy called back. "They've agreed to the meeting. Though reluctantly, your father specifically objected to my presence, but I insisted as your legal representative. We're set for tomorrow at 2 p.m. in my office." I spent that evening preparing not legal arguments or financial calculations, but the honest, difficult truths I needed to express to my parents. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about healing. It's about creating the possibility of a healthier relationship moving forward. When I arrived at Mr. Abernathy's office the next day, my parents were already there, sitting stiffly in the leather chairs across from his desk. My mother wore her church face, the mask of polite composure she donned for public appearances. My father looked annoyed, checking his watch repeatedly, as if this meeting were keeping him from more important matters. "Ethan," my mother said with a tight smile as I entered, "you're looking well?" My father merely nodded in acknowledgement. Mr. Abernathy began the meeting with a summary of our agreement. The full scholarship remainder would be returned to me with interest. In exchange, I was requesting this opportunity to address the underlying issues in our family dynamic. "Before we proceed with the financial transfer," he concluded, "Ethan would like to speak with you both." All eyes turned to me. Taking a deep breath, I began. "First, I want to be clear that this isn't about the money. Not really. The scholarship fund is rightfully mine. Grandpa Max intended it for me, and both Mrs. Davis and Uncle James have confirmed that. But what hurt the most wasn't the money itself, it was what taking it represented." My mother shifted uncomfortably while my father's expression remained impassive. "For as long as I can remember," I continued, "there's been a pattern in our family. Lucas is celebrated for the bare minimum, while my achievements are treated as expected, unremarkable. When he barely passed high school, you threw him a party. When I got into Westridge with a scholarship, I got a nod and a reminder not to let it go to my head. "That's not fair, Ethan," my mother interjected. "I've always been proud of you." "Have you?" I challenged gently. "'Cause pride isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's expressed through actions, through recognition, through treating someone's accomplishments as valuable and worthy of celebration. You've always been self-sufficient," my father said, speaking for the first time. "You never seemed to need the validation that Lucas did." "I didn't need it less," I clarified. "I just stopped expecting it because it never came. You know how it feels to work twice as hard for half the recognition? To watch your brother get second, third, fourth chances while you're expected to get everything right the first time?" My mother's eyes were filling with tears. But I couldn't tell if they were from genuine remorse or from discomfort at being confronted. "When you took that scholarship money," I continued, "you weren't. That his needs always come first, even when it means taking something explicitly meant for me." "We were trying to be fair," my father insisted. "You have a good job, prospects. Lucas is struggling, and whose fault is that? Not unkindly. Lucas is struggling because you've never held him accountable. You've never let him experience the natural consequences of his choices. You've always been there to clean up his messes, to make excuses, to find the money for one more chance that he doesn't earn and doesn't appreciate." The room fell silent. Mr. Abernathy sat quietly, allowing this necessary conversation to unfold. "I don't want to cut ties with you," I said, my voice softening. "You're my family, and despite everything, I love you. But I can't continue in a relationship where I'm consistently devalued, where my boundaries are ignored, where I'm expected to understand and forgive while Lucas is expected to do nothing but receive." My mother was openly crying now. "We never meant to make you feel that way, Ethan. Lucas has always needed more help." "I understand that," I acknowledged. "But helping Lucas shouldn't come at the cost of hurting me. It shouldn't mean taking what's rightfully mine or dismissing my feelings when I object." I looked directly at my father, whose rigid posture had begun to soften almost imperceptibly. "Going forward, I need things to change. I need my achievements to be recognized, not taken for granted. I need my boundaries to be respected. I need to be treated as an equal member of this family, not as an afterthought or a resource to be tapped when Lucas needs bailing out. If we don't agree to these terms," my father asked, a hint of his usual defensive pride in his voice. "Then you get your money back," I said simply, "but you lose me. I won't participate in a family dynamic that consistently diminishes me. I deserve better than that. Grandpa Max knew it, and deep down, I think you know it too." The silence that followed was heavy with decades of unspoken truths, of patterns so ingrained they had become invisible to those perpetuating them. Finally, my father spoke, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I don't want to lose you, son," was perhaps the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. "Then meet me halfway," I replied. "Recognize the patterns. Be willing to change them. Treat both your sons with equal respect, even if we need different kinds of support." My mother reached across the table, tentatively touching my hand. "We can try, Ethan. I never realized how our focus on Lucas was affecting you. I thought we were doing the right thing." "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. Gah. They hadn't been malicious, just blind to the impact of their choices, trapped in patterns that had calcified over decades. Mr. Abernathy quietly slid a document across the table, the agreement for the return of the funds. My parents signed it without further objection, a small but significant acknowledgement of the truth of my position. As we prepared to leave, my father paused at the door. "Sunday dinner," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Would you? You consider coming? Not this weekend, but maybe next. It'd give us all some time to process." It was an olive branch, awkwardly extended but sincere. "I'll think about it," I promised, not committing but not refusing either. It was a beginning tentative, fragile but real. The funds were transferred to my account the next day, $43,875 plus interest, as agreed. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was the first crack in a dysfunctional family system, the first acknowledgement that change was necessary and possible. Over the following weeks, I focused on building my new life. I found a better apartment closer to Innovatech, invested some of the scholarship money in additional certifications that would advance my career, and set aside a portion for an eventual down payment on a home. These were practical steps, but they represented something deeper: my commitment to building a life on my own terms, honoring my grandfather's belief in me. My relationship with my parents entered a cautious reconstruction phase. We exchanged occasional texts, mundane updates, tentative questions about each other's well-being. I did attend that Sunday dinner, which was awkward but less tense than I had feared. Lucas was sullen at first, clearly having been told that his windfall had been rescinded. But even he seemed to recognize that something fundamental had shifted in our family's power dynamics. 6 weeks after our meeting in Mr. Abernathy's office, my mother called with news that surprised me. "Your father and I have been seeing a family therapist," she said, a note of embarrassment in her voice. "Dr. Levine, she's been helping us understand some of the patterns you talked about." I was momentarily speechless. My parents seeing a therapist? It was the last thing I would have expected from them. That's great, Mom, really. "We were wondering if you might join us for a session sometime. Not to put you on the spot, but Dr. Levine thinks it might be helpful for all of us to have a guided conversation." I hesitated, wary of being drawn back into old patterns under the guise of healing. "I'd like to talk to Dr. Levine myself first," I said carefully, "to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're trying to accomplish." Of course, my mother agreed readily, another small sign that something was genuinely changing. The old Jennifer Mercer would have taken my caution as rejection and responded with hurt or anger. I did speak with Dr. Levine, a straightforward woman in her 50s who impressed me with her no-nonsense approach to family dynamics. She acknowledged the deeply entrenched patterns in my family without excusing them, and assured me that she was not there to pressure me into resuming unhealthy relationships. "What I'm trying to help your parents understand," she explained during our phone consultation, "is that true family support isn't about always giving the most to the squeakiest wheel. It's about seeing each family member as an individual with unique needs and strengths, and responding appropriately to each." Her words resonated with what I'd been trying to express to my parents. With cautious optimism, I agreed to join them for a session the following week. That therapy session was one of the most challenging and illuminating conversations of my life. My father, traditionally stoic and dismissive of feelings talk, actually opened up about his own upbringing, how his father had consistently favored his older brother, setting up a pattern he had unconsciously replicated with Lucas and me. "I think," he said slowly, visibly uncomfortable, but pushing through, "I overcompensated with Lucas because I saw myself in him not quite measuring up, always struggling to find his place. And I took you for granted, Ethan, because you seemed so capable, so self-sufficient. Mistook your independence for not needing support or recognition." My mother, for her part, admitted something I'd long suspected but never heard acknowledged. "Lucas reminds me of my brother Michael," she said, tears in her eyes. "He died when I was 12, car accident. He was always getting into trouble, needing help. But he was so charming, so full of life. When Lucas came along and showed those same traits, I think I transferred all those feelings onto him. I couldn't fail him the way I felt I'd failed Michael by not somehow protecting him." These revelations didn't instantly heal the wounds of years of unequal treatment, but they provided context, understanding. They helped me see my parents not just as the people who had hurt me, but as individuals shaped by their own complex histories, acting out patterns they hadn't even been fully aware of. Dr. Levine guided us toward concrete steps for healthier interactions, regular family dinners where everyone's achievements would be acknowledged, clear boundaries around financial support for both Lucas and me, open communication about expectations and disappointments instead of festering resentment. As I left that first session, my father did something he hadn't done since I was a small child. He hugged me awkwardly, but sincerely. "I'm proud of you, son," he said gruffly. "Not just for your achievements, but for having the courage to call us out when we were wrong. That took real strength." Those words, so simple yet so profound, were worth more than any scholarship fund could ever be. The transformation in my family wasn't immediate or perfect. Old habits resurfaced. New boundaries were tested. Lucas, in particular, struggled with the shifting dynamic, alternating between resentment at his reduced status and tentative efforts to establish a more equal relationship with me. One evening, about 2 months after our first therapy session, he called me out of the blue. "Hey," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I was wondering if you could help me with something." My guard immediately went up, conditioned by years of his requests for help that usually meant money or covering for him in some way. "What's up?" I asked cautiously. "I'm trying to put together a resume. It's for a real job, not just the part-time stuff I've been doing. There's an opening at Riverdale Community College in their administrative office, and I thought, well, you've always been good at this kind of thing. It wasn't a request for money. It wasn't asking me to fix a problem it was a genuine request for skill-based help, an acknowledgement of my strengths without entitlement. "Sure," I said, surprised but pleased. "Email me what you've got so far, and we can go from there." That small interaction marked another step in our family's slow healing process. Lucas was beginning to find his own way, to take responsibility for his life rather than expecting others to clear his path. My parents were learning to support both of us appropriately, recognizing our different needs without playing favorites. And I was learning something too, that standing up for myself didn't have to mean cutting ties completely. That it was possible to maintain boundaries while still allowing for growth and change in my relationships. That forgiveness didn't require forgetting, but it did open the door to new possibilities. 3 months after my graduation, I received another letter, this one from the executor of my grandfather's estate, informing me that the sale of his house had been finalized and that, as specified in his will, the proceeds were to be divided equally between Lucas and me. It was a substantial amount, enough to provide a significant down payment on a home or to invest for the future. But the money itself wasn't what moved me to tears as I read the letter. It was the realization that my grandfather, in his wisdom, had provided for both of his grandsons equally in this final gift. While still ensuring that my scholarship remained exclusively mine, he had understood the delicate balance of family support, equal love and consideration, but not identical treatment. Different needs, different strengths, different paths, all valued, all respected. I called Lucas that evening to tell him about the inheritance. "Grandpa wanted us both to have a solid start," I told him. "Different paths, but equal support." There was a moment of silence on the line before Lucas responded, his voice thick with emotion. "I miss him. He always saw the best in both of us, didn't he?" "He did," I agreed. "And he wanted us to see it in each other, too." That conversation marked a turning point in my relationship with my brother, not an instant transformation into best friends, but the beginning of a more authentic connection based on mutual respect rather than competition and resentment. As I hung up the phone, I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, my grandfather and me on a fishing trip when I was about 12. Both of us grinning widely at the camera, his arm around my shoulders. I had always treasured that photo for the memories it held. But now I saw something deeper in it, the legacy my grandfather had left me that went far beyond money or property. He had shown me what it meant to truly support someone, to see their unique qualities and needs, to believe in their potential, to hold them accountable, while still offering unconditional love. It modeled the kind of person, the kind of family member I wanted to be, and in standing up for myself and refusing to accept less than I deserved, I had honored that legacy more truly than I could have by silently accepting the status quo. I had broken a generational pattern that might otherwise have continued indefinitely, creating the possibility of healthier relationships, not just for myself, but for our entire family going forward. That night I sat down at my computer and began writing not code for work, but a letter to my future self, a reminder of what I had learned through this painful but ultimately transformative experience. Never settle for being valued less than you deserve. Never compromise your integrity for the approval of others. Never forget that real family, whether by blood or by choice, sees you, respects you, and celebrates you for exactly who you are. It was a promise to myself, a boundary, and a possibility, a hard-won wisdom that would guide me through whatever challenges lay ahead. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.